Hello, YouTube. Welcome to my Resto Shaman guide. I have been diligently trying to get these class guides out before Kata releases, but it's a lot of work, and I can feel the life force being drained from my body as I do these, and not in a good way, to be honest with you. Kind of feels like I'm in college again, actually. Just trying to meet deadlines and shit. Like, why have I put it upon myself to do this? I don't know. But I'll try my best to get it done because I care about you guys. We're all like a big, happy family. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of love back and forth between the both of us. I can feel it. Just kidding. I fucking hate all of you guys. And I hate Blizzard too. In the wise words of Mr. Popo, you're all a bunch of worthless maggots to me.
Any questions? Yeah, I got a maggot.
That's okay though, because I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to be your bitch. Your guide making bitch. That's all I'm good for. So, you better fucking enjoy this guide, or else I will have no reason to exist. So let's talk about Resto Shaman. This class is in a very strange predicament in Cataclysm. Their purpose in a raid has been muddied a little bit because of the Dragon Soul patch. Resto Shaman's main strength in every expansion is stacked up raid healing, and that was a really important strength to have in original Cataclysm because a lot of these bosses in this first raid tier require a lot of stacking up, and Resto Shamans were the only healer back then that was good at stacked up raid healing. However, in this version of Cataclysm that we're about to play, Holy Paladins will be better at stacked up raid healing than Resto Shamans because of Holy Radiance. So, what does that mean for you as a Resto Shaman player? What is your purpose in a raid now? Well, on the surface, it's not great. There's going to be a lot less stacked up raid healing for you to do, which is doubly bad because your mastery increases your healing on people who are low health. But I don't think people are going to get to low health when the raid is stacked up and the Holy Paladins are using Holy Radiance. So how are you going to spend all of your mana if there's not going to be as much stacked up raid healing for you to do? Well, I believe that you will spend that mana on spot healing. You'll be more of a spot healing, raid healing hybrid this time around rather than just a raid healer. And that could be pretty fun, to be honest with you. Cataclysm desperately needs a good spot healer because none of the other healers are particularly good at it. Holy Paladins did all the spot healing in original Cataclysm, but this time around, they'll be spending as much of their mana as possible on Holy Radiance instead of Divine Light, so that spot healing role needs to be compensated for by someone, and I think that someone should be you, and I will explain why when we get into the spells section of this video. But for now, let's look at the talents. So I did a little research on this, and it seems like the raid healing spec for Resto Shaman was hotly debated back then, because every guide I looked up recommends a different build. So I don't know what people were thinking, or if nobody knew what was going on back then or what, but here's the build that I think is best for raiding. And I'll talk about a few of these talents here. So let's go over Focused Insight first. This talent was apparently optional back in the day, but I fail to see how that could possibly be the case because what you get from this talent is a 30% healing increase on every single healing rain that you cast for a mere 989 mana each. How is that not required for raiding? Healing rain heals for like 100 billion, so like a 30% healing increase on that is a lot. And another thing is this talent, you don't even have to hit the enemy with it. Like, you'll still get the buff even if Flame Shock misses. So definitely take this talent. And I'll be sure to go into more detail on how you should be using it in the bosses section of this video. Moving on here, the next talent we've got on deck is Ancestral Healing. This is a buff that priests also provide, but Shaman's version of it is straight up better and easier to apply, which means it is incredibly important. that you maintain this buff on any active tank. Because if you can do that, then the Disc Priest doesn't have to spec into it. And all you have to do to maintain it is just keep Riptide up on any active tank, and that's it. The hot portion of Riptide applies the buff. So it's very simple, and you should have no problems doing this. Next up, we've got Ancestral Awakening and Blessing of the Eternals. Now, in pretty much every guide I looked up, one or both of these talents were considered required to take. I think they're both complete trash, and I'll explain why. So, Ancestral Awakening is trash because it requires you to crit with a single target direct healing spell. That is bad for two reasons. One, the single target direct heal you're going to be casting most of the time is Riptide, and only the initial heal of Riptide is affected by Ancestral Awakening, not the hot portion. So if you proc Ancestral Awakening from Riptide, it's going to heal for jack shit. And the second problem is crit is your worst stat. So you're just not going to be proccing Ancestral Awakening very often. As for Blessing of the Eternals, well, this ability sucks for even more reasons. The first reason is that it only procs when people are below 35% health. Ha! Good luck with that. That's not going to happen very often. Secondly, if someone already has Earth Living Hot on them, when they drop below 35% health, it doesn't get replaced with another one. Third problem is that the Earth Living Hot sucks ass. It heals for around the same amount as Healing Wave, which is really, really bad. And lastly, the Earth Living Hot is a heal over time spell, which means it's probably going to overheal at least a little bit, especially since people who are below 35% health tend to get extra healing from the other healers. So if that person who's below 35% health gets topped really fast, well, that Earth Living Hot is just going to overheal. So for those reasons, Blessing of the Eternals and Ancestral Awakening are the optional talents in my mind for Resto Shaman, along with Improved Cleanse Spirit, obviously. So it'll be your job to figure out which of these two talents is the least worthless for each boss fight, and then you can make your choice. Everything else is required, including and especially Telluric Currents along with the associated hit rating talent. So why is Telluric Currents required? Well, that is because it is a decent source of mana regen that scales really well with gear, which means it will become a lot more than decent later on. So you will have to spec into it, unless you're on a boss where it's really hard to go but I don't think there are any in this raid tier. And the hit rating talent is also required because missing lightning bolts is disastrous. You're not only losing the potential mana regen from lightning bolt when you miss, you're also losing the mana that you just spent casting lightning bolt. It'll literally take you 5 lightning bolt casts to recuperate the mana that you just lost from missing one. That is horrifying. So make sure you take this talent and also get a lot of spirit so that you don't miss. Spirit Link Totem is a new addition to Resto Shaman and Cataclysm, and this ability is really, really niche. I wouldn't say this ability is great most of the time. It's mainly good for saving lives if people are at different health levels. So like in dungeons, for example, if individual players are getting pwned and you don't have the time to land a heal on them, then Spirit Link is your get out of jail free card. But in raids, you'll mostly be using this spell for raid-wide AoE damage. And for that kind of damage, I wouldn't say that this cooldown is any better than any other raid cooldown. In fact, it's almost certainly worse. So, it's a cool ability. It looks pretty. And it can be extremely good in certain situations and on certain bosses, but overall, it's just kind of whatever. And the last talent I would like to talk about is Improved Shields. You cannot take this talent if you're running Telluric Currents because you won't have enough points. But is that a big deal? Well, not really, because this talent is not as good as it may seem. First off, it only increases the amount of mana you generate from the Water Shield orbs, not the passive regen you get from Water Shield. So that is pretty bad. But another reason it's not great is because Earth Shield is actually not that good in Cataclysm. Now, don't quote me on this because I don't actually remember, but I feel like Earthshield was a lot stronger in Wrath of the Lich King. Because in Cataclysm, Earthshield is just straight up way worse than Healing Rain and Riptide in terms of healing per mana. So by taking this talent, all you're doing is buffing a spell that is not even that great by 15%, which isn't that big of a deal, to be honest with you. With my gear that I had on the Cata private server, I would get around 10k extra healing every 30 seconds with improved shields, which doesn't seem that great to me, especially compared to something like Focused Insight. So don't go losing your head over not being able to take this talent. Anyways, here's the glyphs that you're going to be running, and all of them are extremely self-explanatory, except for one. Glyph of Stoneclaw Totem. What the hell is that? I didn't even know this existed in original Cataclysm, but it actually just makes your Stoneclaw Totem put a 16.5k shield on you for only 984 mana on a 20-second cooldown. Do you know how good that is? I'll show you with these spell breakdowns here. This is how good each of your spells are, and here is where Stoneclaw Totem is. That is a really good ability, and you can use it preemptively. So if you're about to take a big hit of raid damage, you can just press Stoneclaw Totem before it happens. That's essentially a free 16.5k healing on yourself, and you can't go wrong with that. The only problem is it doesn't scale with gear. So it'll be 16.5k at the beginning of the expansion and 16.5k at the end. So definitely use this glyph at the beginning of the expansion, but as time goes on, it'll get worse. But then again, there's no other good glyphs for that spot, so you might as well just keep it. Now, in regards to the rest of these spells here, well, there won't be anything that is too complicated or surprising if you're a long-time Resto Shaman enjoyer. This class has always had kind of a basic game plan. It's either Chain Heal spam, or Healing Rain and Chain Heal spam, or in this case, Healing Rain, Riptide, and Chain Heal spam. And the reason why Riptide makes its debut into the Resto Shaman rotation is because it's very mana efficient and has high healing per global, which it did in Wrath as well, but Chain Heal was just a lot better in Wrath and spammable, so you just kind of used that instead. Chain Heal is still good, mind you, but it acts more as a mana dump rather than a god spell that you can use in every situation. And since it's no longer a god spell, you will need to make sure that you hit at least 3 players with your Chain Heal because it'll be a significant mana efficiency loss if you don't. So typically what you'll want to do is prioritize the melee DPS with Chain Heal as they tend to be clumped up, and also don't Chain Heal your Riptides. It's only optimal to do that if you Chain Heal the Riptide right at the end of its duration. If you do it a little bit early and you take off 2 ticks of Riptide, well, you actually just lost healing by doing that. So I wouldn't worry too much about chain healing your Riptides in this expansion. It's such a small healing increase and extremely demanding execution-wise that it's just not worth losing your head over. And to be honest, what I would do is I would purposefully throw Riptide on people that I'm not intending to use Chain Heal on. So for example, if the whole raid is taking damage on Maloriak and you've already got Riptide up on both tanks, well, you can throw a Riptide on one of the ranged DPS and spam Chain Heal on the melee. Another example is Phase 3 of Cho'Gall. You'll want to put Riptide on people who are higher health and Chain Heal the people who are lower health, because if you do the opposite of that and you Riptide the people who are low health, well, they're going to need more healing than just that. But now you can't cast Chain Heal on them because they have Riptide. So try to avoid getting into that situation. Now let's talk about Healing Rain. You will need to use this ability as much as possible because it does an enormous amount of healing. So whenever 3 or more people are taking damage, make sure you're using Healing Rain. But at the same time, don't get carried away and start throwing out Healing Rains off cooldown without thinking, because this isn't retail. You're not just going to use Healing Rain when nobody is taking damage. Also make sure that you use Flame Shock before casting Healing Rain as much as possible because of Focused Insight. There will be some situations where you won't want to such as on Magma. When he blasts the raid for a bunch of raid damage, you'll want to Flame Shock the first Healing Rain that you cast, but by the time Healing Rain comes off cooldown, the raid will be 5 to 8 seconds away from being topped up, which means that your second Healing Rain will partially overheal. So what's the point of giving your second Healing Rain 30% extra healing if it's just going to overheal anyways? Healing Wave is an interesting one. Most of the other healers use their slow, low mana cost heal at one point or another, but not you. You're just never going to use Healing Wave, except for at the very start of a fight when you're sitting at 100% mana. But why? Why would you never want to use Healing Wave? Well, the reason is Telluric Currents. In order for this form of mana regeneration to be utilized to the fullest extent, two things will be required of you. The first is you'll need to spend your mana aggressively. If you're slowly whittling down your mana bar, then all of those lightning bolts are just going to overcap you on mana. And the second thing you need to do is not cast very many healing spells throughout the fight. If you're constantly casting healing spells, well, you're not going to have any time to press lightning bolt, are you? And this is exactly why Healing Wave is bad, because it hardly moves your mana bar, and as such, you can spam it all the time, which is exactly what you don't want to do, because if you're spamming Healing Wave all the time, you're not casting Lightning Bolt. So just don't use Healing Wave. Greater Healing Wave, on the other hand, will be used despite how inefficient it is. And there's a couple of reasons why. The first is that shamans are going to have more mana available to them than every other healer because of Telluric Currents. And what that means is that you'll be able to spend mana on inefficient heals, such as Greater Healing Wave, more often than the other healers will. Secondly, Greater Healing Wave is unique compared to what the other healers have. Spells like Healing Touch, Greater Heal, and Divine Light are all very similar in that they all have slow cast times and mediocre HPS. So for example, if you're playing a Paladin, you don't want to stop casting Holy Radiance to use Divine Light, because that's a big HPS loss. As a priest, you don't want to stop casting Prayer of Healing to cast Greater Heal, because that's an HPS loss. And the same applies to Druid. Shaman, on the other hand, is the only healer that gains HPS when they cast their strong single target heal, Greater Healing Wave, and it's because of Tidal Waves. Tidal Waves makes Greater Healing Wave a faster cast, which in turn makes its HPS really good. And also your Mastery makes Greater Healing Wave better than it otherwise would be, because it'll do more healing when people are low health. And that is exactly why I think Resto Shamans will be the ideal healer for spot healing this time around. Now, that's not to say that you won't have any help when it comes to spot healing. There is one other healer that is going to help you, and that is Disc Priest, because of Power Word Shield. Power Word Shield is very high HPS and instant cast, so if an individual player in the raid is about to die, it's the Disc Priest's job to delay their death with Power Word Shield, and it's your job as the Resto Shaman to prevent their death with Greater Healing Wave. So on an Ascending Council, for example, if this situation happens where these three people are about to die, it's the Disc Priest's job to Power Shield them all before that happens, and it's your job to save them with Greater Healing Wave. None of the other healers are good at healing emergency situations like this without completely destroying their mana bar and their HPS, so it is primarily the responsibility of the Disc Priest and the Resto Shaman to save people's lives in a raid. Technically, Holy Paladins can help out with the spot healing, but they'll only want to do it on bosses where there aren't any good Holy Radiance opportunities. So I wouldn't rely on them too much to help you out. Anyways, moving on here, we got Healing Surge, which in my opinion is complete worthless trash. You can just take that shit right off your bars because you shouldn't ever be using it in any situation. Shamans just do not need their fast cast emergency heal as much as the other healers do, because Greater Healing Wave is already fast enough with Tidal Waves. So just don't use Healing Surge ever, okay? Good. Next up, we've got another spell that you shouldn't be using. Unleash Elements. This spell is really bad. It's a very small efficiency increase, and you can't use it when anyone is taking a lot of damage because the HPS is complete trash. So, for example, on Valiona and Thorelion, if someone is getting dumpstered by this arcane explosion shit, you're not just going to cast Unleash Elements on them and then follow it up with a Greater Healing Wave, because they'll be dead before you get the Greater Healing Wave off. This line of thinking also applies to Flame Shock. You don't want to Flame Shock your Healing Rain in this situation, like I do, because Flame Shock does no healing. So if you use Flame Shock, the player will be dead before you get any healing off on them. But anyways, if you're going to use Unleash Elements, you would want to use it on Riptide, specifically the Riptide that you're maintaining on the tank. But again, it's such a small efficiency increase that you can honestly take Unleash Elements off of your bars as well. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about your mana regeneration abilities, and I'll do Tiller Occurrence first. This ability single-handedly turns Resto Shaman into an always be casting type of healer. Technically, no other healer in Kata has to constantly cast spells in order to maximize their HPS, but Shaman is the exception. For Shaman, every single global that you miss is lost healing because of Tiller Occurrence. Therefore, the better you get at playing Resto Shaman and the better you are at positioning your character to minimize movement, the more lightning bolts you will be able to squeeze in throughout a boss fight. Also, I would probably use instant mana potion instead of the channeled one as a Resto Shaman, because you can just lightning bolt to get your mana back, and the channeled mana pot prevents you from casting lightning bolt. Holy Paladin is in kind of the same situation where they can just melee the boss to get their mana back, so there's no reason to use the channeled mana potion. Mana Tide Totem is the next mana regen ability that I want to talk about, and there are two things that you need to keep in mind when you use this ability. First, you want to make sure that you delay the first Mana Tide Totem for as long as possible, because if you use it within the first 2 minutes of a boss fight, you'll be completely screwing over the other healers. Every other healer is trying to get to their first mana regeneration cooldown as fast as possible so that they can get the CD rolling on it. So for example, druids are trying to get to their first innervate within the first 2 minutes of every fight, priests are trying to get to their first Shadow Fiend, paladins are trying to get to the first Divine Plea. So if you use Mana Tide within the first 2 minutes, you're making it that much harder for them to get their mana regeneration abilities on cooldown. Now the problem is, you can't use your first Mana Tide Totem too late either, because your second Mana Tide Totem will come off cooldown right as the boss is about to die, which is no good. So try to hit your first Mana Tide at the 3 to 3.5 minute mark, but no sooner than that unless your guild just kills bosses really quickly. You also have Water Shield that you want to maintain at all times, obviously. And as for totems, you want Stone Skin, Flame Tongue, Healing Stream, and Wrath of Air. But don't worry about Stone Claw Totem replacing Stone Skin too much, because I'm pretty sure Pallies provide the same buff with Devo Aura, so you can just use Stone Claw over and over again instead. And as for dungeons, you'll want to use this build, and the playstyle will be fairly simple. You just want to let Riptide do all the work, and also Healing Rain if 3 or more people are taking damage. Only when somebody drops below 50% health do you want to use Greater Healing Wave, because it'll the shit out of you if you use it too much. And if people are ever dying too fast and you don't think you'll be able to land the Greater Healing Wave in time, well, you have 2 get out of jail free cards. You have Nature Swiftness and Spirit Link Totem. So make sure you use those if you're in a sticky situation. Here's what it looks like. Okay, here's a little Throne of the Tides dungeon boss for you. So I start off Earth Shield on the tank, and Riptide on the tank, and just kind of Lightning Bolt to get some mana. And then I'm trying to just let Healing Rain and Riptide do all the work. I put Stoneclaw Totem down because I'm a dirty boy. I'm a dirty boy. And then as soon as someone drops below 50% health, Greater Healing Wave. But not more than that, because I don't want to go So I'm just trying to let Riptide and Healing Rain do the work here. And that's all I'm doing. Just filling with Lightning Bolt. Greater Healing Wave on that guy because he's dying. Picks him right back up because Shamans are so good and so easy to play in heroic dungeons. You just have so much healing that you can do so fast. And the gameplay is just really easy. It's just this. Just keep using Riptide off cooldown. and let it do all the healing for you while you just kind of spam lightning bolt. And if you ever get into a sticky situation, like I said before, you've got NS and you've got Spirit Link, and try to stand kind of mid-range like I'm doing, so that if you need to drop Spirit Link, you're close by, you know, you can just drop it. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for that boss. Don't think he's gonna do anything else. Just gonna put Earth Shield back on the tank into a Riptide, probably Riptide the other guy, and then the fight will be over. Yeah. Okay. Here's some more dungeon footage for you. This one was taken on the Cataclysm private server that I was on, so this is pre-nerf. And yeah, just gonna Earth Shield Riptide the tank. Easy peasy, spam lightning bolt. Waiting for something to happen. And the boss is gonna do a little AoE here, so I just Riptide and Healing Rain and just let those spells do the work while I just kind of spam lightning bolt here. Yep, keep using Riptide off cooldown. And these ice shards are happening. And the DPS take a lot of damage from this because they're all a bunch of stupid, dumb, idiot retards. Dead ass, no cap, on God. And so I used Spirit Link because I got scared a little bit. Oh, and when you use Spirit Link, you want to do like a 360 no scope spinner-rooney kind of thing. So like, watch me do it here. So I kind of, when do I use Spirit Link? Use fucking Spirit Link. Okay, there we go. See how I like turned my character around? Because Spirit Link spawned out of your left ass cheek. So you want to make sure you're landing your 360 no scopes as you do Spirit Link, or else it's gonna be behind you if you just go in, you know, straight and then use it. I'm using Chain Heal here. Technically, this is a good time to use Chain Heal, but I like to avoid Chain Heal in dungeons because it's just the HPS is low and it's hard to get Chain Heal to hit all 4 people. So I prefer to use Greater Healing Wave most of the time, but that was a good situation to use Chain Heal. And yeah, just kind of Riptiding here, waiting for more raid damage. Here's some more raid damage, and now at this point someone's going to die because I used Focus Insights, and I also just played badly. So here's the Ice Shards again, and I use Flame Shock way too late. I use Healing Rain way too late, and people die. Now, you ideally want to get Healing Rain off a lot sooner than that, and Flame Shock's just making it even harder to get Healing Rain off in time. So yeah, just don't use Focus Insight for that reason. It's just not great in dungeons, to be honest with you. Let's go over some bosses now. I'm gonna do Maloriak, Alakir, and Omnitron Defense System. So let's do Maloriak first. This boss has a lot of different phases, but I wouldn't say any of them are particularly difficult to heal. He has a black phase on heroic mode where a bunch of oozes spawn that throw black puddles under random people. And this will be pretty healing intensive, especially if your raid blows ass. So you're going to be spending a lot of mana here. And since the damage is random, you got to keep your trigger finger on Nature's Swiftness, because it's highly likely that random people are going to die extremely fast. And if Nature's Swiftness isn't up, well then just be ready to cast Greater Healing Wave on anyone that drops below 50%. Other than that, you're just going to be using Flame Shock into Healing Rain off cooldown on the melee, and spamming Chain Heal on the melee as well. You'll also be maintaining Earth Shield and Riptide on the Ooze tank, but not on the Maloriak tank, because in this phase, Maloriak does an ability called Engulfing Darkness, which deals damage to the tank over the course of 8 seconds, and the tank cannot be healed during that 8 seconds. Once the 8 seconds is over, you'll have 3 seconds to heal the tank in preparation for another 8 seconds of no healing. So all you have to do to deal with this ability is keep Maloriak on focus, so that when you see that his channel is about to end, you can immediately cast Greater Healing Wave on the tank during that 3-second window. And if you time it right, you can land 2 Greater Healing Waves during that 3-second window, although that probably will not be necessary. Next, he does a red phase where the raid stacks up and takes a big burst of damage every 10 seconds. And there's also a debuff that he puts on someone that does ticking damage, so you can just Riptide that person. But overall, healing this phase is going to be really easy. The main thing is just to be ready for the damage. So what I would do is I'd keep an eye on this timer here, and 5 seconds before the damage happens, I would use Stone Claw Totem into Flame Shock, into Healing Rain, and then start casting in Chain Heal so that it lands right as the ability goes off. You do not want to wait for the damage to happen and then start casting Healing Rain, because you'll lose a lot of healing if you do that. After that, he'll do a blue phase where everyone spreads out and one player will get a dot that does AoE damage around them, and every so often another player will take a big hit of damage and get frozen. All you gotta do is just be ready to use Flame Shock Healing Rain if a melee gets the dot, because all the other melee are gonna take damage as well if that happens. And in regards to the big burst of single target damage, yeah, I mean, just use Greater Healing Wave, obviously. And lastly, he goes into a green phase where the tank takes 100% to increase damage, so prepare to pump Greater Healing Waves into him. That's it for the regular phases. After you do those for a while, you'll transition into the last phase at 25% and start casting Acid Nova, which does a fuck ton of ticking damage to the entire raid, kind of similar to on Hodier. And there will be big bursts of random damage depending on how many people get hit by things that they're not supposed to. Again, it's your job to heal those random bursts of damage because your class is the best at it. And also, it looks like the raid is only going to be a little bit spread out in this phase, so you can throw Healing Rain down on either the ranged or the melee and just kind of spam chain a heal on whoever is the lowest health. Let's take a look. Alright, here's the start of the fight. The black oozes seem to spawn immediately, or they're like right next to the boss on the pole, so this phase is going to start like right away. And as soon as you see like the little black kind of shit going through the air like this, that's when the raid damage is going to start. So do what this guy's doing. Focused Insight, Healing Rain on the melee as soon as this starts happening. And all you're going to do is chain heal spam the melee. If the ranged take damage, just let the Resto Druid heal that, unless the ranged are like below 50% health. If any of the ranged drop below 50% health, get ready to use Nature's Swiftness, or just use Greater Healing Wave. But other than that, you're just kind of chain healing here, making sure to be cognizant of what's going on with this tank here. So you see how Maloriak just stopped doing his engulfing darkness shit. So you have 3 seconds to heal the tank up to full. Here's the tank right here. This guy should have cast a Greater Healing Wave on the tank there, but he didn't. A little bit risky, but that's all you gotta do. As soon as this channel stops, Greater Healing Wave, and there's a timer for it here. So like right here, I would start casting Greater Healing Wave on the tank so that it lands right now, and it land right there. And that's all you gotta do. You just gotta be cognizant of it. I would put Maloriak on focus so that you can just be aware of when that's happening. But other than that, this phase is pretty easy. Just don't stand in the black puddles because those do a lot of damage really, really fast. And yep, making sure to keep Riptide and Urshield on this tank here, and then you'd be fine. Here comes the next phase. He's still doing Engulfing Darkness, which is pretty cringe, but alright, here's the next phase. So there's the red vial. We're in the red phase now. He's gonna immediately do the Scorching whatever the fuck, which is right there. That was a well-timed Healing Rain. And there's the Scorching Blast timer right here. So I would just, as soon as this hits 5 seconds or 4 seconds, I would do Stone Claw Totem into Flame Shock, into Healing Rain, and to start casting Chain Heal in preparation for the big hit that is about to happen right now. And that's all you gotta do. You just keep doing that over and over, trying to land as many Chain Heals and stuff as possible, because this is what Shaman is good at. You know, you're good at the stacked up raid healing, so you want to be pumping the heals during this part especially. And then after this phase is over, you're going to get a blue phase, which will be much easier to heal, and you can just kind of spam Lightning Bolt during this phase and get all your mana back. So you can just kind of chill out here. Don't do what this guy's doing, where like he uses Healing Rain when there's no damage happening. Don't do that. Although I think there might have been damage happening here. It's hard to tell with this UI. Yeah, so there's like the dot, and the dot will do damage to anyone around you. So when you use this Healing Rain here, there might have been a dot on the melee. So no, this was good. Okay, so the dot's on the melee. It looks like it's on a warrior. So that was a good healing rain. But just don't use healing rain when there's no damage happening. That's really bad. But overall, this is a very, very light damage phase. You're just gonna riptide this tank, riptide that tank, and lightning bolt. A lot of lightning bolt to get your mana back. This arcane storm shit shouldn't be going off. It only happens if the DPS are slow at interrupting. But if the arcane storm does go off, just immediately put healing ray down and spam chain heal. You can even position yourself in like a good way so that you can use chain heal on yourself instead of using chain heal on the people that are in melee range. Like if an arcane storm were to go off at this point, this is a good spot to stand because then you can chain heal yourself, right? And it will bounce to like all these people. So you can position yourself near other people to use chain heal on yourself. That's something I used to do in like Wrath. Anyways, that's the end of that phase. We're going into the green phase now, and the green phase is going to be over really quickly, apparently. And all that happens is the tanks are going to get fucked up. So the Maloriak tank is getting fucked up because he's taking 100% increased damage. The other tank will probably get fucked up too, so just get ready to heal them. And that's all the green phase is. The DPS are going to kill all those ads that spawned, and then the phase will be over. And that was every phase. So it's gonna be black ooze phase into red phase into blue phase into green phase, and then that's just gonna repeat for the whole fight all the way until 25%, which is all the way over here. These guys look like they're, how many healers do they have? 6 healers. This fight took 12 minutes. I don't think there's any reason why this fight should take 12 minutes. It should be more like 9, I would think. But maybe these guys have shitty DPS. I don't fucking know. Or they're just using way too many healers. Anyways, let's go to the last phase here. Where is it? What's the boss's health at? I can't fucking see. Oh, it's 29%. Okay. Okay, here's the last phase. It's coming now. There we go. Doing a blue phase again. Here's the last phase. All right. So, Riptide on tanks again. Healing rain. You don't have to use healing rain in melee. You can use it in the ranged here because the ranged are like pretty close together. But depends on your strategy. If you see that the ranged are spread out really far, then use healing rain on the melee. But you'll have to lead with the healing rain because the tank's always going to be moving throughout this phase. So it's going to be difficult to get good healing rains on the melee, I feel. But yeah, whenever these blue orbs like explode someone, you have to be the one to heal them because you're the one with greater healing wave, right? So anytime someone gets blown up by these blue orbs that are floating around, the melee are gonna get fucked here. Yeah, see all those guys? See, you got a greater healing wave, all of those guys. Just be ready for that. That's your job. And the acid, I didn't talk about the acid nova yet. So the acid nova happens when he blows up into a green mist kind of thing. It's right here. Hopefully there will be a DBM timer for this, but it happens every 30 seconds. And you just want to have healing rain down the instant that this ability goes off, and then just start machine gunning out chain heals. It'll be much easier though if there's a DBM timer for it. But that's all this phase is. You're just gonna spend the rest of your mana chain healing and using greater healing wave if people get hit by the frozen orbs, which they probably will. I believe the strategy you're supposed to do is have one person soak each blue orb, not while this raid damage is happening, mind you. Like, you're not supposed to soak it while this is happening unless you're using like a defensive. It looks like the tank soaked that one. But I think that's basically what's supposed to happen. So overall, this fight's pretty easy, I'd say. I think you're going to have a lot of mana to work with because you're going to be able to get a lot of lightning bolts off during this fight. So that's about it. All right. Next up, Alakir. Resto Shaman is certainly the easiest healer to play on this boss because all of your spells work really well with the mechanics of the fight. Phase 1 in particular is going to be very difficult for every other healer to heal because there's a lot of movement going on and there's a lot of bursty random damage going out. Good thing that Resto Shamans are especially good at healing random bursty damage even while moving because you have greater healing wave and Spirit Walker's Grace. So when you get into this situation, where a bunch of people are getting chained by the lightning strike, you are either going to plant your feet, press 2 greater healing waves into a 3rd greater healing wave with nature's swiftness if you need to, or you can use Spirit Walker's Grace and do exactly the same thing while moving. I promise you that nobody's going to die through that much healing. There is no way in hell. Resto Shamans also have the privilege of not having to worry too much about their mana bar in Phase 1. You'll ideally want to be at around 60% mana going into Phase 2, which will be a lot harder than you think because you'll be using a lot of Lightning Bolt in Phase 1 and there just won't be a whole lot of damage to heal. So don't be afraid to just blow your mana bar in Greater Healing Wave in the first phase. When Phase 1 is over, you're just going to wait for everyone to stack up to use your first Mana Tide Totem. And you can delay it a little bit if you want to, but your second Mana Tide Totem will come off cooldown at some point in Phase 3. So you'll just kind of use it again when that happens. Now, there's not going to be much damage happening for the first minute of Phase 2, so all you're going to do is Flame Shock Healing Rain off cooldown, and Riptide off cooldown, then spam Lightning Bolt. What you're aiming for is to be at exactly 100% mana right as the damage starts to ramp up in Phase 2, because that's when you're going to start spamming Chain Heal. Here's how it's going to work. On any boss where you don't have the mana to just spam Chain Heal every single time the raid takes damage, you're going to want to make sure that you utilize your mastery to the fullest extent possible when you're healing. So in this case, you'll only want to use Chain Heal when the raid drops below a certain health threshold, let's just say 70%. The instant the raid drops below 70%, start using Chain Heal. And when they go back above 70%, you start using Lightning Bolt again. It's as simple as that. Don't worry too much about how much mana you have by the end of this phase. As long as you've managed your mana well up to this point so that you're beginning your Chain Heal spam at 100% mana, you'll be completely fine for the rest of the fight. For Phase 3, all you gotta do is put Riptide up on the person that gets Lightning Rod and spam Chain Heal and Riptide after the Wind Burst happens. I assume you'll be able to cast totems in the air, so try to put them right in the middle as you're flying downwards so that the totem buffs reach the top part of the flying area and the bottom part of the flying area as well. Alright, here's the start of the boss fight. The healer setup you'll probably have for this is you'll probably have the Disc Priest and Resto Druid healing the tank in front of the boss here. And you'll probably have a Holy Paladin on each side of the boss. And the Resto Shaman and Holy Priest will probably be in the back. And the reason you want to put the Resto Shaman and Holy Priest in the back is because all the melee are going to be standing in the back. And you don't want healers that heal from melee range, because then everybody will just be stacked up on top of each other and chaining the lightning conductor. So I think it's better, personally, to put a Resto Shaman and a Holy Priest in the back, even though you won't have Riptide on the tank. But I don't think it will matter too much for the first phase. So that's how I would do it, personally. And keep in mind that Holy Paladins can't use Holy Radiance in this phase, so they'll be spamming a shit ton of Holy Lights and Divine Lights, and they'll be healing the tank as well through Beacon. So I really don't think the tank is going to die, even though he won't have ancestral healing from you because you'll be too far away. Let's see what this guy does. So, start of the fight, keeps Riptide and their shield up on the tank, that's fine. And nothing really happening. There's going to be a wind burst here. And as you get knocked back from this wind burst, you want to cast Riptide while you're midair. I'd have cast it on the Shaman here. And then just spam Greater Healing Wave, especially if this happens. So like he got Lightning Conducted, everyone's getting chained here. And Shaman is especially good at healing this situation, like I said before, because you can just plant your feet and use Greater Healing Wave into another Greater Healing Wave into NS Greater Healing Wave. Nobody's dying through that. So you can absolutely save everyone's life here, even though this guy is failing to do so because he's not casting anything. He hasn't casted a single ability. And he just let the hunter die because he didn't cast anything. Not a single spell except for maybe a Riptide he might have thrown out there. Now he's casting Healing Wave, and I don't know why. And now he's dancing, and I don't know why. So that was just disappointing. But try not to do what that guy just did. That was just terrible. Alternatively, you could use Spirit Walker's Grace during this as well. You know, as he was running out of this ability here, he could have just used Spirit Walker's Grace and kept healing, but he just didn't do it. So whatever. And as you can see, this guy's full mana. Mana is going to be difficult to spend in this phase because it really isn't as much damage as you would think, unless you get really bad RNG and you get all the lightning conductors in your vicinity. Then there will be a lot to heal. But other than that, it's just going to look like this. You're going to be lightning bolt spamming, and there's going to be nobody taking damage really. So it'll be a lot more difficult to get down to that 60% mana threshold for phase 2 than you might think it would be. But overall, it's just you know, just wind burst damage and using lots of greater healing wave. And that's pretty much it. So let's go on to phase 2 here. Here we go, everyone's stacking up. You're gonna use Mana Tide as soon as everyone gets kind of condensed here. And from this point onward, you're using Flame Shock, Healing Rain, and Riptide off cooldown. Making sure to use Riptide on any active tank, so that includes this tank here that's tanking the Stormling. Keep Riptide on him. Keep Riptide on the Alakir tank, obviously. And you're just spamming Lightning Bolt. Healing Rain, Riptide, and Lightning Bolt until the damage ramps up, which will be at around, let's say, here. Oh, not here. Where's the ramp up? Okay, around here. Yeah, so you see how this guy's 100% mana going into the part where the damage really ramps up? That's what you want to be. So this guy did a good job. You should be at 100% mana going into this, because this is when you're going to start spamming Chain Heal. And every time someone gets below 70% health, press Chain Heal. And you'll still be using Riptide off cooldown and Healing Rain off cooldown, obviously. And that's just going to happen for a while. There's one thing that you don't want to do, though, and that is this. You see how a Tornado Wall is coming? You don't want to do what this guy does and put your Healing Rain. Hold on. Go back here. Okay. Yeah, so here's the Tornado Wall. He puts Healing Rain right here, even though the Tornado Wall is coming. Everyone is just going to move out of that Healing Rain, like this. So do not do that. Always lead with the Healing Rain, or else that will happen. But other than that, this phase is really easy. Try to chain heal the people that are not standing in your healing range. So in this case, the melee and the ranged are standing in it. But if the melee are not standing in your healing range, then you'd probably want to chain heal them because they'll be lower health. He just did the same thing again. He didn't lead with the healing range. Now everybody's out of it again. But yeah, that's all this phase is. It's not too bad. You're just going to use your healing cooldowns at the end. At the end of this phase, you'll use healing CDs as everybody's getting fucked. These guys use 8 healers. 8 healers for this boss. You do not need 8 healers to heal this boss. I can promise you that. In fact, you probably only need like 5 or 6, to be honest with you. Especially these days where Holy Paladins will have Holy Radiance. I feel like that AoE damage in phase 2 is going to be nothing these days, but we'll see. We'll see. Anyways, this is the last phase, and you're just going to do the same thing, Riptide as you're flying through the air there, and then just spam Chain Heal. If you manage your mana properly, up to that 1 point in phase 2, you'll probably have a lot of mana going into this phase. So you should have more than enough mana to just machine gun the shit out of Chain Heal for all of this raid damage. And unless your raid stacks up super tightly, Holy Paladin's Holy Radiance isn't going to do like that much. So ideally you want to do a lot of healing here in this phase to make up for that. And yeah, like I said before, the lightning conductor, or lightning rod I guess it's called, riptide that person, and if that person ever gets low health because the other healers are like AFK or something, it's your job to save their life because you're the shaman and you have greater healing wave, so you're the one that's supposed to save them. So always keep your eye on the person who has lightning rod and be ready to cast greater healing wave on them if they need it. But yeah, that's it for this fight. Resto Shaman is definitely like the easiest healer to play on this one for sure. You're just gonna have a boatload of mana to burn through, and you'll be able to pump a lot of healing in phase 3. And yeah, overall it just won't be too bad, I don't think. There's not a whole lot of thinking that's required. As long as you utilize your mastery in phase 2 as much as possible, you shouldn't have any mana problems, so I think you'll be fine. Alrighty, last boss. The Omnitron defense system. One of my favorites. The main thing you need to know about this fight is that 2 of these bosses do big damage. One of them does a little bit of damage, mostly avoidable. And the last one does basically nothing. In fact, he helps you more than he hurts you. Magmatron and Electron are the wombo combo. Those are the ones that do big damage. So if both of them are active at the same time, you'll want to be using raid cooldowns. The main reason I say if is because the order of the bosses is random every single time you pull the boss. So on one pull, you might get Magmatron into Electron, into Toxitron, into Arcanatron, and another pull you might get Arcanatron into Magmatron, into Toxitron, into Electron. So that's a little bit annoying. But the main difficulty of this fight is just how many fucking DBM timers there are. So your first course of action will be to disable every DBM timer except for the ones that you really need. And these are the abilities that you definitely want to track. Lightning Conductor, Incineration Security Measure, Chemical Bomb, Power Generator, and Shadow Infusion, since those are the ones that are most relevant to your healing. Here's what you're going to do. The instant you see the Lightning Conductor timer pop up on your screen, that means Electron is active. And you're going to want to have healing rain down the entire time that Electron is active, since he constantly spams the raid with random damage. Incineration Security Measure is the AoE that Magmatron does. You're going to want to make sure you have healing rain down for that right as it starts doing damage to the raid. And Chemical Bomb is the poison cloud that Toxitron throws on a random player. This isn't going to do much damage because people are just going to run out of it immediately, but you still need to track it for heroic mode because of the ability that Nefarian does, Shadow Infusion. Every so often, Nefarian will empower one of the boss's abilities. Typically, the ability that gets empowered is the one that happens shortly after Shadow Infusion is cast. So watch this. Here's the Shadow Infusion. On this guy's UI is called Ability Buff. The ability that happens right after it is Chemical Bomb, which means that's the ability that is going to be empowered. And when Chemical Bomb gets empowered, it sucks the whole raid into it. So if you're cognizant enough, you can prepare for this by immediately casting a healing rain on top of the poison cloud the instant that it spawns, so that when everyone gets sucked in, you'll be doing a lot of healing. In this situation here, you can see that Lightning Conductor is happening 5 seconds after the Shadow Infusion, so that'll be the one that gets empowered. Empowered Lightning Conductor does a bunch of raid damage, so you'll need to have healing rain down for that as well. And here, you'll see Shadow Infusion happening at the same time as Incineration Security Measure. Nefarian doesn't empower this ability, he empowers the one that happens immediately after it, called Acquiring Target. And all Acquiring Target does is it pumps a bunch of damage into one player, so make sure you're spamming Greater Healing Wave on that player who's going to get hit by that. Lastly, here's Shadow Infusion happening at the same time as Power Generator. And all that's going to do is cause the blue puddle that you're standing in to grow in size and explode. These blue puddles increase your damage done and regen your mana, so you better believe that with how parse focused everyone is these days, the whole raid is going to be standing in these as much as possible. Now, as the puddle is growing in size and about to explode, it actually increases your damage done and mana regeneration by even more, which means you'll still want to move out of it, because if you don't, you'll die. But you're not in a big rush to do so. You know what I mean? So just don't be greedy. Don't be greedy, because your raid leader will be very mad at you if you die to this ability. And since this mana regeneration mechanic exists on this boss, you'll be able to spend your mana extremely aggressively for this entire fight. Let's take a look. Alrighty, here's the start of the fight. We got a grid user here, kind of cringe, but it's Electron. So he's just going to spam the raid with random damage, nothing too crazy. Just going to put healing rain down. This guy doesn't have healing rain down for some reason. Now he does. But yeah, just Flame Shock Healing Rain for the entire time that Electron is active. Flame Shock Healing Rain. And he'll empower one of the abilities right at the start of the fight. So right when there's only one Tron active, he'll empower that ability. So Electron's ability is Lightning Conductor, so he'll empower Lightning Conductor, and that's what that Shadow Conduit thing was. This thing. Yeah, you should. I don't know why they used Barrier for this. There's literally no reason to use Barrier here, but whatever. Alright, this is the Wombo combo. Magmatron and Electron active. So Healing Rain is, still going to be down the entire phase. And Magmatron's going to do his ability here, Incineration Security Measure. And you're just going to pump your fucking titties off when he does this, and ideally use raid cooldowns. This is where they should have used Powered Barrier, right here during this ability. Oh, whoops, not at max quality, kind of awkward. Okay. And then immediately after Magmatron does his AoE ability, he always goes into an acquired target right here. And it looks like he empowered that ability. Should have been able to see that coming. You look at the DBM timers here. Yeah, so you see how the DBM timer here, it said Incineration Security Measure and then ability buff, like right after. That's how you know that he's going to empower his next ability. You could also just track acquiring target. You could track this timer, but you don't have to. Usually if the Shadow Infusion is happening right next to the Incineration Security Measure, that's how you know that acquiring target is going to be empowered. So here you go. This guy's stuck in place because it's empowered. So everyone just has to move away, and you gotta heal the shit out of this guy. So who got it? I can't even tell. Looks like this guy. So yeah, just get ready to cast Greater Healing Wave on this guy. You'll probably use Pain Sup. They use Pain Sup on him. But yeah, get ready to just cast Greater Healing Wave on that guy if that happens. And what's coming up next? We got AoE, so you're just still keeping Healing Rain down for that. And he's going to do an ability buff. Chemical Bomb is going to be the one that gets buffed. So as soon as he puts this cloud down, as soon as Toxitron puts a cloud on a random person, put Healing Rain underneath that person. So here it comes. It's going to happen right now. Chemical, where is it? Oh, there it is. So you should put Healing Rain down as soon as you see this cloud spawn. Put it on here because everyone's going to get gripped in right now. Just like that. And your Healing Rain would do a lot of healing. If you need even more healing, you could use Spirit Walker's Grace there, obviously, and just spam Chain Heal. It's up to you. And here's Arcanotron. Arcanotron does absolutely no damage at all. So there's going to be nothing to heal. You're just going to stand in his little puddles here that he drops on the ground. And I guarantee the strategy that people use these days will not be like the strategy that they used back then. People will definitely be standing in this puddle. You won't have like half the raid not standing in it. Everyone's going to stand in this puddle because everybody wants to do big damage. That's just the way it's going to be. So you'll definitely not be seeing whatever these guys are doing. Everyone will stand in this, and it looks like Chemical Bomb is happening right on this thing. So once Chemical Bomb happens on this, you're just going to move towards Arcanotron. Everyone in the raid is going to move towards Arcanotron because he's going to drop another puddle underneath his feet. Like here's Power Generator right here. That's the puddle. So you're just going to move towards him, and then he's going to drop another puddle. Here it comes. Although you did get grip there, I wasn't paying attention to the DBM timers. Let's look here. We got, so see, Chemical Bomb, ability buff right next to each other. So Chemical Bomb is the one getting empowered. Here it is. You move out of it, get grip back in. Could have put a healing rain right there for that. And then looks like Arcanotron dropped the puddle on top of the cloud, which is really down bad. You really do not want that to happen. What the fuck did people just die to there? Let's see. What the fuck? Can't even tell. What was that? That Okay, I have no idea what those guys died to, I'm gonna be honest with you. Couldn't tell you. What could they have possibly died to? When Toxitron and Electron are up? Oh no, this is Electron and Arcanotron. What did they die to? Someone miss an interrupt? Someone must have missed an interrupt or something, because there's just no way. Anyways, here's the Wombo combo again. So healing rain down the entire time, easy. Just dump your mana bar, go fucking crazy on your mana, because you're constantly standing in this puddle, right? Like, you're getting so much mana back. So you might as well just blow up your mana bar for this entire fight. It's not too bad. That was a good Spirit Link totem. And again, this is where you would use raid cooldowns, because this is actually the highest raid damage part of the fight right here, actually. When Magmatron is about to do his AoE and you're getting Shadow Conductor at the same time. So you have this AoE along with Magmatron's Incineration Security Measure, which happens, oh sorry, it already happened. This one. This is what happens. So you have the flamethrower shit and the Shadow Conductor at the same time. That's the highest damage part of the fight by far. So that's where you really want to use raid cooldowns. So it's a good thing this guy used Spirit Link there. And you also want to be pumping the healing, obviously. Okay, so here's the ability buff, and then Incineration Security Measures. So the acquiring target's going to get buffed. Here it comes. He's going to do his AoE first. And then here comes acquiring target. It's going to get buffed. Here we go. Target, this guy won't be able to move. Everyone has to move away. That's how you can tell. And it just kind of repeats like that. Pretty easily. This fight isn't too difficult to heal. You just got to be prepared for each mechanic that's about to happen. So you can preemptively heal it as well as possible and kind of spend your mana as much as possible. That's going to be this whole fight. You're just going to be unleashing your fucking mana bar the entire fight, because as soon as these puddles start coming down, when Arcanotron is active, you're going to be getting a fuck ton of mana back. Let's just see how much mana this guy gets back from this puddle. Like, look at this. Look at how much mana this guy's getting back. And the puddle hasn't even, like, exploded yet. When it explodes, like, what it's going to do now, he'll get even more mana back. Look at his mana bar. Look. See how much fucking mana you get back? So you can just unleash your fucking mana bar on this boss. Absolutely just destroy it. So it's actually not that hard to heal. This boss looks hard to heal because it has a whole bunch of mechanics and shit, but it's technically not that hard to heal because you just have infinite mana. So just go crazy. So that's pretty much it for this fight. Just rinse and repeat over and over and over again until the boss dies. And that, my friends, is the end of the guide. I'm hoping this one is not longer than the Disc Priest guide, because that one was already way too long. But if it is, just sit back, grab your popcorn, drink your sody pops, and enjoy listening to my shitty, mumbly voice. I suppose it doesn't make any sense that I'm saying this at the end of the video, but whatever. I don't fucking care anymore. Just get the fuck out of here. Go watch fucking Bellular or some shit, whatever you freaks are into. Bye-bye.